Hello, everyone. How are we doing today?
Good. How are you, Allison?
Very well, Allison.
I'm doing well. I'm excited to get into this conversation. I want to give our attendees a moment to join us before we jump in. I feel like this is a really good conversation and I don't want anybody to miss anything.
Appreciate it. We're looking forward to it.
For sure.
And I see that our attendee count is rolling up, so I'm going to jump in. Welcome, everybody. We're ready to get started with today's webinar. I'm Allison LaForgia, the managing editor of the content studio at Housing Wire, and our topic today is 3 reasons appraisal management technology projects fail, hosted by AppraisalWorks. A few housekeeping items before we get started with today's webinar. We will be having a Q&A session towards the end of the webinar. You can submit questions at any time for the panel by using the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. We will be recording today's webinar and sending the recording out early next week. And we will be sending out a PowerPoint accompanying that recording so that you guys can go through the resources that we mentioned in today's discussion. Now, to introduce our panel, we have Chris Anderson, the Client Success Manager at AppraisalWorks, Keenan Chen, Executive Vice President, Strategy and Growth at Clear Capital. And we have Frank Guinera, the Director of Sales at AppraisalWorks. Frank, Keenan, Chris, thank you for joining us today.
Appreciate it, Allison.
Thank you, Allison.
Now, Frank, why don't you give us a little bit of an introduction on why we're here today, who's on this panel, and what we're going to be digging into?
Absolutely. So, Allison and group, our AppraisalWorks team has had an influx of inquiries over the past 6 months from customers either looking for appraisal management platforms or exploring a change from their existing platform. And we have a strategic partnership with Clear Capital in that our platform offers several risk and review tools from Clear Capital. So we wanted to invite Keenan Chen to the conversation today. Chris and I obviously are with AppraisalWorks, and Chris is our client success manager. So certainly interested in really getting into the conversation today. But before we do, we wanted to throw up a couple of poll questions for the group, if we could. Our first poll question is, do you currently use an appraisal management platform to manage your appraisal management companies, or if you're managing an appraisal panel today? So,
okay. Now let's jump into the next poll.
Okay, so are you actively looking to implement an appraisal management platform or actively looking to replace an existing appraisal management platform?
And now we'll go into poll 3.
Sounds good. Okay, so this one really is looking and asking, what do you consider the most important in an appraisal management platform? Ease of customization, reporting, or efficiency gain? There could be more than that, but we tried to keep it to just 3.
Frank, I don't know if you expected those responses to weigh so heavily on efficiency gain, but I'm not surprised there.
Kind of. Yeah, we hear that a lot, especially in this market, right? The efficiency gain is crucial, right? With everybody trying to watch expenses, volume is down. So you have to watch your expenses and you have to maximize, you have to get more done with less. It's kind of a motto right now, I think, for everybody in our industry is get more done with less. And an appraisal management platform, a good appraisal management platform, should go a long way in helping lenders get more out of less. So,
all right. Well,
I kind of did expect that answer.
With that, I do want to jump into the actual content from today. So thank you all for responding to those polls. But we have a really good discussion. Like I mentioned earlier, if you do have questions that come up throughout today's discussion, please drop them in the Q&A. I will be keeping an eye on them throughout this conversation. But to jump into why we're here today, when evaluating an appraisal management platform, what criteria and questions should customers consider?
I'll jump in and start, and then we can maybe go around the horn. This is a really big question, right? Because there's a number of criteria that a customer needs to consider when evaluating a platform, and rushing into a decision without consideration can have disastrous consequences, because oftentimes, you're putting a platform in place, and this isn't just let's swap it out next month if it doesn't work, right? So the first step is to do a needs assessment, right? You need to understand what your specific needs and objectives are of the platform. And this needs to be done by all stakeholders, right? So it can't be done in a vacuum by one group, say by maybe review or processing or vendor management. This really needs to be done by all stakeholders. The second step, and equally important as understanding what your needs are from a platform, it's developing evaluation criteria and a scoring matrix. The reason behind that is you're probably not going to look at one platform. You may be looking at 2, 3, 4 platforms. If you don't have a scoring matrix, you're going to be confused. Your team is going to be completely confused by the second or third demo. And you have to have a way to score each platform, know what's important, so that when you're done looking at your platforms, you can go back and determine which platform is going to be the best based on your needs assessments and the objectives of the platform. And there's a number of things and criteria that you should consider when looking at a platform and developing kind of what that matrix consists of. First and foremost, security, compliance, scalability is extremely important. Customization, which we'll talk about, and customization is probably one of the most important behind compliance and security. You want to look at the integration capabilities. So integration capabilities with your loan origination system, integration capabilities with your vendors, typically if you're managing AMCs, and then reporting. And one piece of advice that I would give the group as you're evaluating platforms is platforms that have a no-code, low-code architecture can really provide tremendous benefits. And I can kind of sum those benefits up, and maybe before I do the no-code, low-code architecture, if you're not familiar with that, really is an architecture that allows the user or the platform provider to customize the platform without significant or at all having to do a technology enhancement. Okay. So when we look at the architecture and the benefits, like you could probably sum it up in really 4 or 5 words, right? I mean, the first is it will empower your group, right? Empower them to create a platform that really fits their needs. The second is flexibility, right? You need a flexible platform. If you have a platform that's rigid, that really in the long run is gonna probably prevent innovation. And in this industry, we need to continually be innovating. Rapid development. So in a no-code, low-code environment, oftentimes, if you have to do a technology enhancement, it makes the development significantly quicker. Okay, so that helps that development time window to get shrunk. And then it will also create more cost efficiency, right? Because if you've got a no-code, low-code architecture and you're able to customize the platform and make tweaks to the platform, to the workflow, to the reporting that doesn't require technology resources, and you can do this in hours, that really creates that cost efficiency. Because if you have to get on a roadmap and you have to wait for technology resources, that can be months, quarters, sometimes never, depending on the platform's roadmap. And then the final thing, and I kind of touched on it earlier, is security. You cannot overlook security. There are some platforms that are built on an old open source technology, and that technology can and most often will result or lead to security vulnerabilities. And a security breach with a platform will have disastrous results. I don't need to tell the group. You can just think of just the reputational risk, even though it's appraisal, right? That a security breach can have disastrous results. And looking at security and making sure that your platform has a very secure technology is critical. So I've said a lot, and maybe if you want to go around the horn, Keenan, if you want to jump in here.
Yeah, thanks, Frank. I mean, those are all, really great points, and maybe I'll take it a little different direction, because I think you really covered well, like, what the capabilities of the platform itself need to be. But there's also something about the way that you think about choosing the company itself, right? That's providing the platform. And one of the simple questions to start with is just, have they already kind of been there and done that? What's really been their track record in the space, in the industry, and what's been their involvement in and even setting standards for what the industry expects in terms of quality and performance. And part of that is really vetting not only the technology itself, but the team, right, that is responsible for the technology, and the track record of how the platform is even created. I think in this case, with both Appraisal Works and Clear Capital, there's a really deep understanding of appraisal itself and of the appraisal market and what the expectations are for lenders, and how they need to serve how lenders need to serve their clients when it comes to appraisal. And for us, of course, we've invested quite a bit. We're focused quite a bit on the underwriting, the collateral underwriting and quality review of the appraisal. And there's a big difference in that realm between completeness, what making sure an appraisal's checked all the boxes and hit the basic standards of UAD and all of that. There's a big difference between that and making sure that your investors are going to be satisfied with the quality of the appraisal as it's been underwritten. And we know that today in this environment, there's a lot of concern about repurchase risk and really having a complete holistic understanding of the quality of that appraisal. So to do that, yes, the technology absolutely has to deliver all the things that Frank said, but there has to be also a knowledge of what is it that investors are looking for. How do you build that into the system? How do you configure that in a way that accomplishes both the efficiency goals to increase efficiency, but also improves quality at the same time? I think that both of those things can happen at the same time if you have the right platform and the right team. And then lastly, looking forward to not just the track record of the past, but is there continued investment going on in innovation as to where the platform's going? Is this a legacy platform that's probably not going to get much investment in it over the next few years, or is this company going to be able to grow with you and continue to tackle new challenges coming up in the market because there's continued investment into the features and capabilities of the platform. So that's kind of how I would think about it.
Yeah, you make a good point before I turn it over to Chris for his input. Keenan, you talked about, the collateral, right? And looking at it from an appraiser perspective. When we developed Appraisal Works, we had a number of appraisers as part of our development team. So, sometimes technologists may look at things differently than maybe an appraiser would look at it. And when you're developing an appraisal management platform, having the appraiser hat on while you're developing is a key component to doing that. So I completely agree with that, because it does, you got to get the collateral right, but having the workflow from an appraiser perspective is key. Chris, what are you seeing? You're talking to our clients all the time.
Well, going last here, you guys certainly have mentioned a lot of great points. I concur wholeheartedly. Keenan, you made a really good point. We're as clients, clients are used to asking potential vendor partners for referrals from other clients. How often do they ask for referrals from partners and their success, from their LOS partners, their different AMCs they're integrated? That'll give you a great idea of how easy this particular vendor is to work with, not only with their clients, but also with their partners that they rely on. So that was a really good point, Keenan. Thank you for that. And then to Frank, to add to yours on that, on the needs requirements on the front end, sure, your platform that you're vetting now needs to have all the function and capabilities that your success requires today. But you also want to look at that platform with a lens of 2, 3, 5 to 10 years. And is that platform going to have the tools and functions to allow you to grow and carry out your strategic goals?
That's very insightful, because we've seen or had conversations with customers that are, exploring moving from a platform, and they have made that point. One reason they're considering a change is that resources are not being allocated to the platform, and the platform isn't evolving with the industry and to meet the needs of not only the lender, but more importantly, the consumer, and provide a good consumer experience. So that's a great point, Chris. I'm glad you brought
Absolutely.
that.
And you don't want to go to your vendor partner with the change. The vendor partner should already be aware of the change, and whether it's a rule or regulation. And they should be communicating that to you proactively instead of vice versa.
So let's dig into that a little bit more. Let's talk about what your experience has been as to why appraisal management technology projects fail.
Chris, why don't you take this one first, because you do so much with onboarding our customers and making sure that they're successful. You probably have some great insight into why projects fail.
Unfortunately, we all fail at sometimes, but we learn from those mistakes. Fortunately, we've been doing this a long time, and really what we found is a lack of planning and then a trickle down to a lack of communication are going to be recipes for disaster. If the vendor you're working for or working with, thinking about working with, doesn't have and isn't able to clearly define and kind of outline their implementation strategy, your road to success, they might not have that figured out themselves. So first and foremost, if that vendor doesn't have a clear timeline and a clear plan for action for your specific workflow and your specific organization, that's a big red flag. Communication. If your team is having to lead the questions, having to fill in the blanks, that vendor is not asking the correct questions. Maybe they're making assumptions. Those assumptions are gonna come out maybe post go live. And then lastly, if we have a disjointed team internally working on your implementation, internally isn't communicating correctly, things are getting lost. That lack of support, centralized management is going to be a big problem as well. And then also unrealistic expectations. If we're setting timelines that are way too aggressive, or we're setting workflows that are way over accommodating or way complex, those are going to be issues down the road as well that can lead to big issues during the project as well.
Ian, I'll let you go next.
Yeah, I think the configuration piece is really key, right? Because, you know, in the onboarding process, you really want to focus on what's going to make the team successful in the use of the technology and ensuring that the things that are most important to your business are able to be handled. And if the cycle time of like needing to make changes is so long that you really can't, you know, that you end up with all of your focus and attention on just the implementation instead of envisioning what what works for the business and what transformative change could be. I think that really reduces the potential of success. You know, maybe it works in terms of the implementation is, you know, finished and up and running, but in terms of getting the real value out of it, the ROI out of it, comes when you can envision what a new process should look like on the platform. So, you know, change management is not just about taking your existing process you do now and sticking it on a new platform, right? It's getting the full value of what, you know, risk-based management, exception-based management, automation, you know, and workflow automation can provide for you, so that you actually get both that efficiency and quality gains. You know, one thing that we see is that as well as that when platforms have limited, for instance, limited API functionality to really be able to do things like manage communication really well between systems, you start building workarounds in right from day one, right? Because you're trying to figure out, oh, what's another way that we can still get this done? Oh, let's go back to using email or some other thing outside the system to just accomplish this piece. You're already setting yourself up potentially for not getting the full value out of a platform change in the future.
Yeah, I tend to see technology projects fail really because of three things, right? And we've kind of mentioned them: inadequate planning or requirement gathering, if you will, right? So the project's unclear, it's not clearly planned. You know, we haven't defined what the objectives are. Again, getting back to what you really should be doing as step one. That really kind of leads itself then to a cloudy roadmap, right? Where are we going? How are we doing this? What is the project scope? What are the timelines, right? That's what, you know, what Chris does exceptionally well is building that project plan with our customer and then putting a timeline on it, right? Because oftentimes we hear from customers is that we started this project and we have yet to launch. So now we're kind of back to square one. That can sometimes be the result of maybe over-promising and under-delivering, maybe by a sales rep, that the platform has, you know, A to Z and it kind of doesn't. So that's important to look at. The other is poor project management. Again, that again gets back to that roadmap, the timelines, and just making sure that the project is on track, who's taking control of it. And then finally, there is sometimes a lack of, I guess, maybe skilled personnel involved in the project, right? Where there might be a technology resources may be stressed on somebody's side, and that could also lead to a failure, right? You know, Keenan, you kind of pointed out, you know, being able to leverage the platform to create that efficiency, and having to go outside the platform or do workarounds. We see some of that when we talk to customers, and as we're going through the needs assessment, where some of that comes out is in their current reporting. Their current reporting, I kind of call it flat file reporting, right? Those Excel spreadsheets that everybody gets. You know, a platform should have a robust reporting feature and technology, right? You know, we leverage an interface with Power BI's or Microsoft's Power BI. And for those of you that have used something like that, you know, it's like going from a bicycle to a Mercedes. You can create and build any type of report. And what that helps customers do is, to your point, Keenan, is really leverage and gain efficiency, because you're able to drill down into the exceptions, drill down into the performance of, you know, your vendors, your own operation, and find out what do we need to do to reduce the kind of the outliers, or reduce, you know, kind of what are the blockers to getting appraisal done efficiently? How do we get review done better so that we have good collateral, right? How can we use automation? How can we, you know, how can we take and automate the entire process? That reporting, having a rigid reporting structure, is a key that we see where customers maybe sometimes are falling down, because they can't get the reports, they can't get the data. And if you don't have actionable data, how do you fix anything?
Exactly.
That's a great point, Frank. And I mean, you know, data is one of those things, you know, it's really, it's not just about, of course you want a great user experience, you know, on the front end, but it goes so much deeper than that. You know, the quality of the models that are driving workflow, and then the depth and richness of the data available and how you can get access to that data is really one of the largest parts of the success of any platform. I mean, it's taken us years and years to build up the type of market coverage and, you know, near real-time data, so that we can see in the platform what the appraisers saw when they're completing the assignment. You know, we've had to create relationships with MLSs all around the country, for instance, so that we have, you know, over 93% of all MLS data flowing in near real time, so that we know that we can see the same comps that the appraiser was considering, you know, that we can see the same market change, and then we're feeding accurate models, you know, like an accurate AVM model as well, so you can judge things like over and under valuation. You know, so asking those types of questions about, it's not just about the features that you see, you know, but what data is driving that, and then how can you gain access to that data, so that from an audit standpoint and what's going to be actually in your file, saying we looked at these things to support the decision that we made, whether it was to, you know, decision we made to assign this to the right provider and our methodology there, or the way that we looked at this from an underwriting standpoint. There's a lot of layers deep that I think you can go to understand there's really quality there within the platform.
I think the other thing before we move on is, and you make a great point, right? As far as review and getting that data, the other thing that our home equity users on the platform, or servicers, is they're able to then take the data and determine, based on maybe a borrower profile, how to create a valuation cascade, right? Using the least expensive, most compliant valuation product based on the risk profile of the borrower. And we see that a lot in the home equity space, to your point, with AVMs and using the best performing model. And again, that having access to that data and be able to manipulate it so that you can create, you know, actionable items to say, here's what we're going to do to improve our process. Here's what we're going to do to improve our QC. And having that data fed into from Clear Capital's MLS data is critical as far as review is concerned.
Yeah, and access is great to that data point, to all those data points. It's imperative, but also how that data is displayed and presented to your team can also have a drastic impact on how it's absorbed and actioned by your team. So we all get probably a dozen Excel spreadsheets delivered to us daily or weekly, some report, and if you're anything like mine, 90% of them just go to the recycle bin. If you're able to prepare dashboards, interactive reporting metrics, and display those to your team, and those relevant ones to the relevant team members, that data is going to be ingested and actioned so much quickly, or so much quicker, and so much more effectively than just dumping an Excel sheet into your inbox.
That's a good point.
I would love, wouldn't you love a dashboard where all your Excel sheets are summarized? You can have quick data points to be
Pie
able to
chart
make
over here, a
decisions
scattergram over there.
instead of just looking at Excel sheets on Excel sheets. Okay. We went over a lot in that question, but I do want to make sure we get to the 2 questions that we have remaining on the docket for today.
Mhm.
So one of the things that I want to spend time on specifically is talking about the appraisal modernization piece, because it's one of those words that has been around for the past couple of years, and I don't imagine it's going to wane in importance anytime soon. So how are you seeing technology platforms help lenders with appraisal modernization?
Ian, I'll let you take this one first, and we'll kind of go around the horn from there. I mean, you've got a unique perspective that I think would be certainly helpful to our audience.
Yeah, I mean, to try to give some context and background, what are we even talking about when we say appraisal modernization, right? So it's really been a journey over the past 5 years, certainly that we've been on, partnering together with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to reimagine, the way to approach appraisal, and this really, has been about, solving a couple different issues. One is capacity and efficiency. I think we all experienced over, in 2020, 2021, the delayed turn times, the rising costs of trying to get an appraisal done. And while we're in a much, lower market volume, time frame here, it doesn't take much, as we know, to be in another cycle, refi cycle, where we could see, volume spike pretty quickly. So capacity was one issue that was looking to be solved. Another is data quality and increasing the objectivity and consistency in the data that's considered for appraisals, and with the hope that more objective approach also means that, and more consistency also means that there's more opportunity for fairness, if you will. So like the same process being followed and the standards being followed across the country, so that doesn't matter where you live, the same type of quality in the result should be consistent. So so that's resulted, that 5 years of investment into trying to figure out what's the best way to do things like bring the home to the appraiser, instead of the appraiser spending 30-40 hours a week just driving. What if there's ways to increase capacity by bringing the appraiser better data at their desk, or to maybe bring in other labor forces as well that can gather data at the house in an objective way, utilizing technology. So the result of that has been some pretty notable policy changes. Desktop appraisals on purchase loans went live last year. Again, with the idea of using more digital data that's already available there. And then this year, Fannie Mae rolled out in April their Value Acceptance Plus Property Data program, which is basically like an extension of their existing waiver program, where a new value is not really needed. What they do is they take a look at the purchase contract amount on a purchase, or on a refi, take a look at the estimated value, And Fannie Mae basically accepts that value and says, you know what, we don't need a new value. That's within our range. You now have value certainty, but we do want to see an up-to-date understanding of that property's condition and characteristics. And so you have to get a data collection at that point. And that data collection can be done by multiple types of workforces. It doesn't have to be an appraiser going to the house. It can be a real estate agent or broker. That's what we use. It could be other types of inspectors. And so they rolled that out in April, and then Freddie Mac also extended their ACE plus PDR program to do the same thing, extend their waiver program to just require a property data report, but no new appraisal, no new value on the property. What we've seen is actually a pretty amazing uptake, if you will, from lenders on these new programs, because it reduces the cost to the borrower and it gives you value certainty. So instead of waiting for that appraised value to come in, a week later and not knowing whether or not you're going to have to bring cash to the table or renegotiate the deal, you get certainty right up front and you save money while you're doing that. We've seen over 200 new lenders sign up for this program since May of this year. And just on the volume that we've done for that, we estimate we've saved consumers over $2 million since May, because on average we're saving $250 per loan when this just the data collection being required as opposed to a full appraisal. And so what we did is we created this universal data collection approach where we can satisfy both GSE requirements with one order, and then partner with Appraisal Works on making sure that seamlessly the response from DU and LP on the Fannie and Freddie underwriting systems can come through in the order, can be fulfilled, and then there's workflow opportunity if we ever need to upgrade that to a hybrid. So having a modern appraisal management platform that has workflow configurability and can adapt to these new types of products is huge, because the benefits to the end client, the benefits to the consumer are immense with these, especially in this highly competitive market.
That's kind of leads into really a good lead into how Appraisal Works is helping, right? So, Appraisal Works is providing our lender clients on the platform access to providers like Clear Capital that can fulfill property data collection for the GSEs. The other benefit that Appraisal Works is providing is the platform has, without getting too deep into it, business rules that can create customizable work queues, so that when those reports come back, the platform can identify that and then maybe move them into a different work queue for review, versus having everything go into, let's say, a standard review work queue that has 1004s and 1025s and sprinkled in there, property data collection. So you can really create the efficiency by using the business rules and customizable workflows. So again, that gets back into doing more with less, and being able to create the efficiency, and not only accessing providers, but also what do you do with it when it comes back? Chris, I don't know if you've got things to add to that.
Yeah, absolutely, Frank. Yeah, that's a great point. One thing that we do really well at Appraisal Works is we recognize competencies, and we recognize what our core competency is, and that's appraisal management. But we also recognize that, Clear Capital is a leader in review. So we integrated with their CCR review tool. We recognize that, Authorize.net is a leader in the payment management. So we integrated with them. We're not trying to reinvent, be a leader in every aspect, but we are willing to reach out to those other leaders and bring them under our umbrella so that our clients can use them.
I love that. I love that you mentioned core competency and talking about what your core competency is and having the opportunity as a vendor to partner with other vendors to really make a great collaborative product, which I think sort of gives us a good jumping off point to talk about our final point before we get into Q&A. So audience, you've heard a lot of information so far. Send us your questions. We want to be here to answer them. And we'll get into that after we answer this last question, which is talking about the expectations that lenders should have when they're looking at appraisal modernization and or appraisal management platforms.
So I'm going to just jump out and make one quick point, because again, Keenan can probably provide us some really good insight around maybe some of the myths. One thing that we tend to hear when we're talking to some customers as it relates to appraisal modernization is that they're kind of taking a wait and see approach, right? Which doesn't really, I guess, compute when I don't understand the wait and see approach. It's already policy. I do understand there's a uniform data set that's coming out and will make adoption a little bit easier. But as I look at appraisal modernization, and what I typically will tell customers as we're talking about appraisal works is take this opportunity to start to implement appraisal modernization now, while unfortunately volumes are low, because it doesn't take a lot for those rates to start coming down, especially with all the geopolitics and economy and everything the Fed's doing, for those rates to come down and come down quick without notice. And then all of a sudden we're in this boom because rates came down. And as many lenders and providers have done we've right-sized our staff, you're going to be in a position, if you haven't burned in the process, to maybe not be able to take advantage of appraisal modernization, or you're going to struggle to get that implemented because the volume isn't going to dictate or allow you to do that, because you don't have the resources, you haven't done the preliminary work, and this is all new. And now all of a sudden it is something that you may not even be able to implement. So my recommendation to every lender is, if you're selling to the GSEs, getting on board with a vendor and selecting a platform that can direct orders to vendors that are approved to do the appraisal modernization orders, the PDRs, the PDCs, the hybrids, is critical. And start doing that now. Burn the process in. Keenan, I'll kind of flip it over to you. I know we've got a couple of minutes here before we try and get some questions, but in terms of myths and what you're seeing, interested in your thoughts.
Yeah, it's funny to hear, myths like, well, I'm going to wait for this to actually become something that lenders, do. I'm going to let someone else go first, and no one's really jumping in, so I'm just going to wait. Well, there's already been 300 through September. I'm just looking at the latest data here. Through September, there's been 392 lenders that have jumped in on these programs already. So it's already happening. There's already a number of lenders that have made this a part of their strategy and are seeing great competitive results because of the service that they can provide their clients. So the wait and see part, to your point, Frank, is we're already past that point because folks are already jumping in and implementing these. So there's 392 folks that are already getting ready, of course, for the future, but they're also already delivering benefits, savings, certainty, right now. The other piece about that is I love this idea of providers working together to solve problems before lenders ask them to. One of the reasons why we saw loan costs, I think, skyrocket over the past, decade and continue to go up, is that there's a lot of great new solutions out there, but the solutions are created somewhat in silos and forces the lender to integrate to a lot of different places in order to try to utilize utilize new tools, but those tools aren't all talking to each other, and so they're not getting that exponential benefit, if you will, by seeing providers actually work together. So that's why I love working with folks like Appraisal Works, where we've thought about some of the friction, some of the challenges, of how to consume different data, different workflows, different user groups that you might have, and tried to solve those in advance so that you can use one seamless solution to get the benefit from that. And appraisal modernization is, I think, one of those areas that you really need to think that way. Think about who's already working together, who's thought through the whole end-to-end process, so that the work is not on your precious resources as a lender right now, but we should be doing the work for you as solution providers. So I'm excited about, where we're at with these policy changes. I think that we're ready for scale already. Like right now, we're ready for scale whenever it arrives. But we can add value along the way if you're jumping in.
Chris, anything to add?
And appraisal modernization, Appraisal Works, we are built on business rules. So our platform is agile. When those changes and rules and regulations come up, everybody's going to interpret those a little bit differently, and put in policies that are just going to be a little bit different. So that vendor partner really shouldn't be trying to approach that with a one size fits all. We know that every workflow under every organization is a little bit different. But they should have the agility and the ability to accommodate those minor variations in how you interpret those changing regulations.
A really good point.
All right, now we're getting close to the top of the hour, so I want to make sure that we have the opportunity. There are a couple good questions that I want to get to for Q&A. Chris, Keenan, Frank, thank you so much for taking us through the main portion of this conversation. I have about 2.5 pages of notes that I'm looking forward to applying beyond appraisals on looking at technology vendors. So I appreciate all of the insight, as I'm sure our audience does. To our audience, there's still time to submit your questions. Please drop them in using the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. So the first question I want to make sure that we talk about a little bit is exploring some of the red flags. I feel like we've talked about what to look for. What are some of the things that you should keep an eye out that aren't great signs as you're going through this process?
So I'll jump in and maybe highlight a couple of red flags. One that can sometimes go often overlooked is the customer support that you're going to get once the platform is implemented. That is key. Right? You can have the greatest implementation plan, the greatest rollout. You go live, and if you don't have great customer support with your platform or provider, but that customer support is critical. If you're going into some queue to just leave a voicemail, I don't know. Me personally, when I'm having an issue with my technology, I really want to talk to somebody. I don't want to leave a message. I'm a pretty impatient person. I need to talk to somebody yesterday, and I need to figure out what the problem is. Customer support is critical. And how do you get to that customer support? Another red flag that, again, we've talked a little bit about it, is the configurability and scalability of the platform. A lot of people may say our platform's configurable. Well, how is it configurable, right? If I need to make a change, does this now require an IT project and to get put on a roadmap? Or can we make this change in hours or a day right, without technology. So asking the follow-up question about configurability and scalability is crucial. It's not a yes or no answer. It is, okay, tell me how, show me how.
Show me.
Like that, right? Show me. Don't just tell me, because a lot of times, you may get again, it depends on who you're talking to, but they may say, yes, we have all of these features, right? Well, show me these features. Show me how you configure things. How do we customize? How do we scale? So there's a number of others, but I'll leave it at that and let Chris and Keenan jump in on some red flags that they're seeing. And we're getting close to the top.
Yeah, honestly, my biggest one is if they're not asking the right questions, if they're not taking the time to understand, where your orders originate, who's originating, those nitty gritty things that they're going to need to know if they're going to build your successful workflow, they need to be answering those minute, detailed questions. And if they're not, are they assuming the answers, or are they just going to be kind of roadblocks after go live? Another thing is that, like Frank said, their customer support. Implementations shouldn't stop at go live. Ours continue for weeks, sometimes a month afterwards, until we reach stabilization. You don't want a vendor partner who's going to give you the keys to the Ferrari and not give you a single lesson on how to drive it responsibly. That implementation plan and timeline should also include post-go-live assessments, opportunity analysis, and an ongoing support schedule with your implementations lead, any integrations, management, as well as your account managers.
Yeah, I think I would double down on, again, it's not just about the tech, it's also about the people, and where is the depth of knowledge of your business, of appraisal. It's funny, I hear that on challenging, for lenders that have challenging experiences with platforms that they've chosen. Often they don't even talk about the platform. They talk about, man, I wish they knew more about this business. I wish that they knew more about what my real pain points are, and could connect the dots for me, a little more. I've been surprised how much I hear that. So, vet the team as much as the software.
All really good points. And before we're out of time, I want to sneak in this last question for all of you. And this is another keyword that I feel like we're seeing all over the news. So what is the role that AI is playing in appraisal management platforms and tech? Keenan, start with you.
Yeah, take it.
Yeah, I love this question because I feel like every single event that I've been at recently or spoken at, AI has been the center of conversation. And it's good to think about it as AI is a big general sort of word. There's a lot of different specific disciplines, so it's good to be specific. But there's a huge opportunity to increase efficiency and quality with technologies like supervised learning, computer vision, and photo AI. We're one of the first ones to really embed photo AI into our review technology. We did it first within our own appraisals that we're providing, and then we put it as a commercial offering into a review platform. And so our platform can do things like understand whether all the photos that need to be there are there, and sync that up to what the appraiser put in page 2 of the appraisal, sync it up with the characteristics and with the sketch, and make sure all those are consistent. But then go up the next layer and also understand what's the condition of the property just from the photos, so that you can bounce that again against the comp selection, against what the appraiser selected as condition rating. And so what that does is it finally removes kind of one of the last big issues of that we're driving, like stare and compare, where it's like, nope, you got to look at the report, you got to read this, and people are Googling things and doing all kinds of stuff. But now it's all one seamless flow with AI, where it's putting the right file in front of the right person with the right scope of what it is that they need to look at. And AI helps that. I mean, we're not talking about AI just making decisions by itself or something here. We're talking about a way that you can make the best use of humans and technology working together to make it more efficient. So absolutely AI should be a big part of what you look at, but it's not the savior by itself, right? It has to be thoughtful in the way that it presents the right information to the right people at the right time.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. With AI and with relation to appraisal works is what will help create that next level of efficiency gain, right? And whether that be in an AI assisted review, or being able to use AI to, maybe fulfill different functions or look at data. All of that is going to now start to take and play a role. And we've just got to use AI responsibly with our technology.
And Chris, I want to give you the opportunity to wrap it up for us.
No, I think AI is going to have a tremendous role in how we develop cascades within the product selection. So analyzing AVM results and then rolling that into a desktop appraisal. No longer will we have to have a human look at the confidence score and the FSD to make that determination. We can just write a bit of a code and have AI do that. And then we're truly just going from managing the orders to maybe managing exceptions on those orders when they arrive.
All right. And we are just squeaking in to the top of the hour. So Frank, Keenan, Chris, thank you so much for taking us through today's conversation. I feel like I've learned a lot, not just about appraisal management technology, but also modernization and how important it is to really look at your technology flows. And I think one of the things that is top of mind for me and is top of mind for, I'm sure, audience members as they're looking at the end of 2023 and looking at 2024 is making sure that you make these decisions now before volume changes, and how difficult the possibility of having technology adoption when there's times of high volume is. So I encourage you to look at this. We will be sending out a recording of today's webinar, and we will be sending it out with a deck that is a resource that will go through some of the points that we mentioned today. So I want to say thank you again to our panelists for joining us, and thank you for our attendees for joining us. The webinar, like I mentioned, will be sent out to you in the following week, but will also be available to view on demand at housingwire.com/events. We look forward to seeing you all again soon.
Thanks for leading the discussion, Allison.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ian. Thanks, Chris.